One Piece Pirate Warriors 4. First released on the 26th of March 2020, 5 years after the previous entry in the series, the game was a complete overhaul of the existing series mechanics, and every returning character was almost completely remade to fit in this new style. Some characters were improved, while others suffered from the changes, and some characters and alternate movesets were completely cut, both to make room for new characters and because of the workload from redesigning all the returning ones. The game's focus on reinventing everything would also lead to a significant amount of content being cut. The game itself had a decent amount to do, but when compared to Pirate Warriors 3, there definitely seemed to be a lot missing. Less story arcs with a focus on fleshing out few specific ones, less side missions with no nightmare log and only one mission in the game at max difficulty. The story missions can be set to an ultra hard difficulty, making them all level 20, which is 2 levels higher than the max difficulty, or the max level you can make a character, although this is optional and gives no further reward, as opposed to true Pirate Warriors, which can only be challenged at level 18. The game would go on to release 3 DLC packs with 3 characters each throughout the rest of 2020, ending in December of that year and then receiving no further updates afterward. The characters were welcome additions, but with no new levels to play them on, anyone that had already finished the game by then, which would have been most everyone, would just be replaying the same levels to grind materials and upgrade their new characters. Unless they already had the materials, and then they could just play the characters a bit and move on. For people like me, who are obsessed with these games and don't need much new content, if any at all, to keep playing for hours and hours, it didn't matter too much, but it would have been nice. Especially since there's no way to encounter any of the new characters in actual gameplay unless you pick them yourself, or someone else picks them in online multiplayer. Speaking of being obsessed, I love this game. Despite there being a lot missing from Pirate Warriors 3, the new characters, new movesets, the dialogue between characters, the maps, the gameplay changes, they're all super good, and have kept me coming back to play just for fun over and over again to this day. I wanted to make videos on this game ages ago, but my own lack of motivation and work ethic left all my notes and research buried deep in my computer with no sign of ever being used. Until July 19th, 2023, when the One Piece game's Twitter posted an announcement that they would be revealing new DLC characters at the One Piece Day livestream event. Naturally, my excitement was through the roof. Who were we getting? How many? The event was Gear 5 themed, so they had to announce that, right? But would they really dedicate a whole new character to just be Luffy that can go Gear 5? Most new characters would have to be from Wano, right? Since that arc wasn't finished when the game originally came out, and they made an original version like they did with Dressrosa in Pirate Warriors 3 that was not accurate to the actual canon. But what about Film Red? That was popular at the moment, they never got a chance to do anything with that. What if they added Uta? They refuse to let that movie die and they keep showing it all the time. They showed it again at the One Piece Day event, so maybe that would be in there, I don't know. I could not stop theorizing about who was going to be announced. Thankfully, the day came and went, and it was announced that we are getting a whole new character pass, with 3 more packs with 3 characters each, same as before. And sure enough, Gear 5 Luffy is the headliner of the pass, with pack 1 being Onigashima themed. Packs 2 and 3 were also teased to be getting Uta and Roger respectively, so most of my predictions were pretty much spot on. Suddenly, I was motivated to talk about the game again. I remembered the files on my computer and, slowly, got back to work. Now that the game is getting more updates and a ton of people are probably going to excitedly pick up the game for the first time or come back after a long break, I actually have a valid reason to make videos on this game, as opposed to before where I just felt like making videos on a game I really liked that no one was playing anymore. In this instance, a tier list / character ranking video that goes over every character and their alternate movesets and determines how good or bad they are as objectively as possible. The idea being that you guys can find out which existing characters are worth checking out, and maybe finding out something you didn't know about a character that makes you want to check them out when you otherwise probably wouldn't. Also, while I was making this video, some news came out about the DLC that shows we are not only getting more levels to play, meaning this video actually has relevance for future content and not just existing content that maybe some people haven't finished or not even played at all and they're just new to the game. But we're also getting new upgrade maps that allows every character to level up even more than before and potentially unlock new skills or maybe upgrade old ones. We'll have to see when it comes out. But it seems like they're gearing up for lots more content to come in the future and for an increase in difficulty. So this video may just end up being a time capsule of the state of the game just before all this new stuff comes out. But if that's the case, it'll at least serve that purpose and be a good way to compare if any characters end up getting buffed or something, so you can see how good or bad they used to be before they got improved. I have spent a painstaking amount of time on every character several times over, discovering new things about them every time, which made it difficult to take accurate notes because you'd think a character was a certain way and then you'd come back a week later to try them again to make sure you were correct and suddenly they'd be completely different. But I think I found the most optimal way to play each character to determine if they truly are S tier or complete trash. Hopefully. After 700 hours, I'd certainly like to think I know what I'm talking about, but knowing me, I'm probably missing something obvious for certain characters. Oh well. If you guys disagree with any takes I have on any characters and think they're either better or worse than I say, feel free to comment your thoughts down below. Let me know how wrong I am. So how does Pirate Warriors 4 work? Well, it's a Warriors game, so it's all about using various combos and special attacks to mow down hordes of enemies, capture territories, and beat any bosses that either show up along the way or mark the final obstacle to finish a mission. Some levels may also have a unique objective to spice things up, although that's usually for story missions. As the fourth entry in the franchise, and one that, as previously mentioned, decided to change a lot of mechanics, Pirate Warriors 4 added various new features and changed existing ones from how they worked in the previous games. The main big change being that all characters are now sorted into one of 4 different types: Power, Technique, Speed, and Sky. Previously, all characters had the same controls, and the differences came from what each character did with those controls and any unique mechanics they may have had to accompany them. Now, a character's controls are determined by their type. All characters default to having a string of 5 normal attacks, with the first 4 leading off to different attacks when using a charge attack at the specific time. Charge attacks can also just be used on their own. With the introduction of aerial combat, these controls are also mirrored in the air. Unless a character doesn't have an air moveset and instead has only a single normal and charge attack. Characters can also jump into the air to start their air attacks, or chain ground attacks into air attacks by jumping during a combo to initiate a jump attack. Power types are characterized by having their ground charge attacks be extendable with 2 extra charge attacks. Inversely, Sky types can have their air charge attacks be extended by 2. Not all power types have an air moveset, but all Sky types have a ground moveset, since that's the default. Speed types have the amount of their normal attacks extended from 5 to 8, and the amount of combo charge attacks increased from 4 to 7. Only 2 speed types don't have an air moveset. Technique types have their charge attacks both on the ground and in the air extended, but only by 1 extra attack, although only 3 technique types actually have air movesets. The defining trait of technique types is that they each have a distinct trait that they can set up and then activate. The most common being either a status effect to inflict and then remove for extra damage, or placing objects to attack in tandem with. They also have a unique mechanic where they can use a normal attack right after any ground charge attack for an extra move that gathers enemies closer to you, as well as other varying effects depending on the character. Another universal mechanic is the stamina meter, which is mainly used for dashing or movement. This also has differences depending on the type. Power and technique types have a short dash, with technique types being faster and slightly longer. Speed types use less stamina and travel further, and Sky types have one long continuous dash until your stamina runs out that also gives them invincibility for the duration. Sky types can also use their stamina to continue attacking in the air without having to return to the ground first. Now, let's talk about specials. In the previous game, every character had 2 specials and a bar with 4 segments that was charged by dealing damage or picking up items that refilled it. A character's first special used 1 segment of the bar, and the second special used 2. Now, every character has an assortment of specials that fulfill a variety of purposes, and 4 can be equipped at once to be accessed in-game by holding the special button and pressing another of the 4 buttons that correspond to the 4 special slots. Specials now also have stars from 1 to 4, with lower star specials requiring less damage to charge, but usually being weaker than those with higher stars. Specials can also be charged by taking damage. Not sure if this was the case before, but it is now. And there are no longer items that can charge specials for you, those have been removed. The most common type of specials are damaging specials, with 1 to 2 stars usually being a smaller attack that is essentially the same as a charge attack or any other normal attack, and 4 stars being big cinematic specials that stun enemies and make you invincible for the duration. 3-star specials can have either of these effects. Other kinds of specials include counter specials that activate when you would take big damage from enemies and counter with an attack 1 time per use, heal specials that restore health by a large amount, specials that buff your character, and specials that debuff enemies. Most of these aren't affected much by stars other than the amount they need to be charged. In previous games in this series, as well as other Warriors series, characters had a dedicated mechanic to power themselves up for a limited time. This game also has that mechanic, but now it is accessed as a special and needs to take up one of the 4 special slots to be used. This is referred to as Full Force Burst, and once activated, it speeds up a character's actions for a set duration until the meter runs out. All Full Force Bursts are 4 stars and thus require the highest amount of special charge. Full Force Burst also has differences depending on a character's moveset type. Power types receive an attack buff, speed types have reduced stamina consumption, technique types have their unique trait powered up, and sky types are permanently suspended in the air so they always have access to their air moves and reduced stamina consumption for a longer continuous dash. Some characters also have other unique traits, such as invincibility for the duration, or even multiple full force bursts, which we'll get into later. Some characters also have a special full force burst known as a form change, which works the same as normal full force bursts do, but also transform the character into a new form with a different type and a whole new moveset. The last important player mechanic to bring up is skills. Characters have 6 slots that can be filled with equipment called skills that give different effects to improve them in various ways. Skills affect many aspects of the game, such as damage output, defense, healing, stamina usage and refill, and even boosting materials earned from levels. Skills usually take up 1 to 2 slots, with a few taking up more, requiring the player to strategically choose how they want to build their character the best they can while limited to only 6 slots. Feel free to read through all the different options and decide for yourself how you want to play the game, since you might find better builds for yourself, but here are some of my recommended skills that are usually the go-to when building for harder content. Resilience lengthens the duration of full force burst. Devotion does the same, but only for technique types. But both can be equipped, which means technique types have access to an even longer full force burst. Concentration allows you to fill special gauges easier. Full force burst enhancement boosts your damage while you're in full force burst. On-land attack enhancement and airborne attack enhancement boosted the damage of your normal attacks on both the ground and in the air respectively, with special attack enhancement boosting the damage of your special attacks. Hero Strength gives you the damage boost that you would get from picking up a damage boost item after KOing a certain amount of enemies. Cheat Death gives you a higher attack boost the lower your health is, and Undying gives you a higher defense boost the lower your health is. Builds will be different, and sometimes other skills will be included that I will explain as they come up, but for the most part, these will be the bread and butter for every character in the game. Cheat Death in particular is the star of the show here. being the biggest attack boost in the game. It's intended to be balanced by coming with the risk of dying more easily due to being at low health all the time, but Undying offsets that with great defense, and some characters are even so good they don't even need to worry about taking damage, provided you're good enough at the game. Suddenly, the game becomes more about getting to low health as quickly as possible and maintaining that without dying, while also dodging every healing item that drops like it's a minefield, since even the smallest health increase can reduce your attack boost. So how does all of this play out in-game? How do we use all of this to determine whether a character is good or not? To answer that, we need to talk about the main gameplay loop that defines the game. Fighting hordes of enemies is simple enough, any character can take them out with enough attacks, but the real challenge of the game comes from fighting bosses. When fighting mini-bosses and regular bosses, the enemy will have a gauge above their health called the armor gauge. This gives enemies more defense and must be broken by attacking them until it is depleted. Once broken, the enemy will take more damage for a limited time until the bar refills and the armor replenishes itself. The gauge will also be accompanied by shields that disappear with each armor break, and if armor is broken again once they are depleted, then the enemy will be stunned in addition to taking more damage. Afterward, the shields are replenished and you start from the beginning. Seems simple enough, right? You attack enemies, deal some damage while breaking through armor, and then go all in with a big attack and a special or two once it's broken, and repeat until they're defeated. Well, once an enemy loses a third of their health, they activate their own full force burst and emit a red barrier that stuns and knocks you back. They can do this at least twice, with each third of their health. But aside from sky-type enemies starting to fly and being a bit harder to hit, it's still not that big a deal, right? Well, remember how I said some characters can become invincible during full force burst? That still occurs when those characters are bosses, which means the only way you can begin damaging them again is by breaking their armor and forcing them out of their full force burst. Although their armor does become harder to break once they're invincible. So, you can be almost about to defeat a boss, but you drop a combo or they unfairly decide to escape your attacks, and then they interrupt you, become invincible, and then receive whatever other buffs they would get for free. Super annoying. This is what defines whether a character is good or not. How quickly and efficiently they can defeat an enemy before they burst, and, if they fail that, how easily they can break their armor and try again after that. Also, how easily they can defend themselves to compensate for any potential lack of strength. One more important enemy type are the giants. These are huge enemies with huge attacks that have protected armor gauges that you can't damage unless the giants themselves are attacking. They seem intimidating at first, and they aren't to be underestimated, but their health isn't that much higher than normal bosses, and the added difficulty of breaking their armor also feels offset by the damage reduction not feeling as apparent as are normal enemies. It's definitely still there, but usually I just ignore it and the giants still go down pretty easily. Breaking their armor would certainly be better, but some characters aren't that great at breaking armor. In order to test each character and compare their strengths, I took each of them into True Pirate Warriors, the highest difficulty level from the current game's treasure log. Originally I just used any old level, but the ratings wouldn't be fair if I didn't use the same level every time. And the level itself is also the best way to test the character's capabilities, since it's a high difficulty level that includes giants, invincible enemies, and bosses that power themselves up to give themselves higher stats for an extra challenge. I didn't use the extra hard story mode to test because I'd never really tried it before making this video. I know, kinda weird that I spent over 700 hours playing and testing this game, but never once played the actual highest difficulty content. I swear it didn't feel all that different back when I first tried it years ago, and I never really got around to beating it since it was low priority and would just be the same story levels, but the enemies have like higher health, as opposed to the treasure log levels, which aren't affected by difficulty options, and are set at only one selectable difficulty that you can't change. But just to make sure I didn't have to throw out all my notes, I ran through the whole thing start to finish and found that, yeah, the enemies have more health, with some particular enemies that already have more health for being big bosses in the story mode, suddenly having tons more health. But the biggest change was that enemies do a lot more damage. I loaded into a level and a group of minor enemies tapped me a few times and removed 2/3 of my health. Keeping low health for cheat deaths suddenly became a lot more risky, especially since undying seemed to barely reduce the insane damage I was taking. It was definitely an eye-opening experience, and if the DLC is any indication, we may be getting more levels around that difficulty and potentially even higher. Although, we may also be getting to level up our characters more to compensate for that difficulty, so it might not be that bad. Either way, my research is still fine. Just take what I say for each character and double it for any content above level 18. Alright, time to actually talk about the characters themselves. Here's how it's going to work. We'll go through each character one by one, detailing their moveset type and their potential to attack in the air, any unique gimmicks they may have, and how the character works in general, how good they are at breaking armor, how much damage they can get after breaking armor, and how long they can keep a combo up for, how good their damaging specials are, if they have any utility specials and how good those are, how their full force burst works with any potential unique mechanics, detailing their form change if they have one, and then a general rating where they would rank on a tier list. After going through everyone, there'll be a visual tier list to make it clearer where each character ranks compared to the others, but as we're going through, we'll just give a general letter grade. Now then, without further ado, let's rank the One Piece Pirate Warriors 4 roster before the new DLC comes out and changes everything. Luffy has both a pre-time skip and a post-time skip version. Both are power types with air combos. Both versions have good combos and good damage, as well as good armor break from their multi-hit moves. Gum Gum Storm is a good low star special that does a lot of damage and armor break. They have good special damage, but a large amount of their specials involve transforming into third gear, which shrinks pre-time skip Luffy and ends his full force burst early. Post-time skip Luffy no longer has this problem, so he's free to use any special he wants. Pre-time skip has Gear 2 as a form change that makes him a speed type, but keeps his power moveset and simply lengthens his normal attack string. His attacks are faster in Gear 2, but his specials are limited. Jet Stamp is a good multi-hit move, but not as good as Storm, and Giant Jet Shell is great, but ends the form early because of third gear, leaving Jet Gatling as the only usable good special, and it's just okay. Post-time skip gets access to Jet Stamp, which can be used with Storm for good combos. Post-time skip Luffy has 2 form changes, both being Gear 4. Bounce Man is a Sky type, and has pretty good damage, but his attacks either leave him vulnerable or send him flying far away from his target. His charge attack is a safe ranged move for decent armor break in an emergency. His specials are good, with Double Culverin having good damage and armor break. Snake Man is a speed type and has a faster version of Bound Man's charge attack. His normal attacks are fast, but don't have good damage. Black Mamba's a good move, but requires reaching combo 7, and his other moves are all similar to each other and not good for combos or damage. His specials are good, but King Cobra has a hitbox at the beginning of the animation that can free enemies from stun and allow them to activate burst. Both are good characters and have a lot of options, and can be built for any situation, but pre-time skip is held back by his third gear penalties, so he's only B tier, while post-time skip is A tier. Zoro also has a pre and post time skip version, with both being power type with air combos. A pretty simple character, Zoro has good damage and good special damage, but his guard break isn't great. His specials are also slow in their animation, which doesn't always matter, but sometimes enemies will unfairly break out due to how long it takes. They both get the Streaming Wolf Sword special, which has decent armor break and also makes them invincible during the attack. Post time skip gets access to Great Dragon Shock, which can briefly interrupt an enemy's attack, which can be useful if you need to stop a deadly attack that's about to happen, and don't have access to something else to make you invincible. Zoro works well with on-land or special attack enhancement. He's pretty good and can work fairly well, but he doesn't particularly shine in any way, so both versions are C tier. Nami is a technique type with no air combos. Her special gimmick is that she can create clouds above enemies with combos and then activate them with a charge attack to inflict damage. Straight up, Nami sucks. She has slow attacks with terrible damage and bad armor break, and her clouds barely do any damage. She has good special damage, but can't reliably fill the gauges quick enough without a skill like concentration to have them be consistent, and enemies will usually survive and burst right after anyway. Her only decent tool for armor break is the Thunder Breed Tempo special, which has a low charge rate but is slow and can miss easily. She has 2 full force bursts, which would normally be great because you can charge one while the other is active and stay on burst forever, but it doesn't remedy any of her other problems. Her Weather Egg burst has her send out clouds with all of her normal attacks, but they're too small and spread out to effectively damage bosses. Her Servant Full Force Burst has Zeus spam lightning around her whenever you press a button, which can juggle foes, but carries on too long and frees enemies from your stun when you use a special, so that they're able to get out and burst, effectively ruining any combos you try to do. The lightning can also drag enemies along with you, which is bad when you're trying to dash away from an enemy and they're about to do a big attack. She has a counter to protect her from one attack, but after that she's vulnerable until she can charge it again, and Nami is easily comboed until death. She also has the ability to inflict freeze, which can pause armor refill with her combo 3, but it's slow to get to and unreliable. You can try building for max offense and full force burst time, but to me she requires way too many safety nets and defense skills. She has potential, but too many deaths while researching her sent her straight down to F tier for me. Usopp is a technique type with no air combos, and he has both a pre and post time skip version, with the pre-time skip version also having an alternate version that changes his normal attacks to be homing and changes his combo 2 to be a multi-hit attack. The time skip version lacks the homing attacks, which kind of makes the pre-time skip with the Kabuto slingshot a bit better. Usopp's gimmick in pre-time skip is that he leaves oil spills with combos, or a trail of them in full force burst that can be ignited with fire moves for decent damage. Post-time skip instead leaves seeds that can be activated to sprout plants to attack, usually a repeat of the last attack he used that left the seeds behind. His attacks and armor break are okay, and are ranged so you can keep a safe distance, and both of them have good damaging specials, with the best being Atlas Comet, which has a tricky hitbox but rewards you if you hit it right with lots of damage. Usopp also has our first instance of instant armor break with his Flash Dial special. It has short range but immediately removes armor from an enemy, which means you don't need to worry about enemy bursts since you can just remove it as soon as they fill their armor back up. He also has several specials that can stun an enemy for an extended period of time. These are Net and Sleep Star for both, and Cala Maria for time skip only. They can't remove armor, but they can stop it from refilling after an enemy is stunned. The Net is also fantastic since it can refill special gauges by a lot if you hit a bunch of enemies with it, including its own gauge, meaning you can use Flash Dial, Net, and Atlas Comet for infinite specials, infinite guard break, and good damage. He also has a counter that can refill gauges by a little, but there isn't really room for it with the other ones I just mentioned. He's probably best built for special enhancement, and both Usopp's are S tier. Sanji has both a pre and post time skip version with a bit of a twist, as his pre time skip is speed type with air combos, but his post time skip changes to a sky type. Sanji's gimmick is that he can't attack women. Any normal attack or low star special will bounce right off and leave Sanji stunned for a second. Although, this can be bypassed with cinematic specials that still do full damage, which is good because Sanji's specials have good damage. His damage, combos, and armor break in pre-time skip are all good, and he has access to 2 full force bursts, which means they can be infinite. One is just a normal burst, but the other, Diable Jimbei, gives his specials even more damage. giving him an even better chance against women. His post-time skip, on the other hand, still has good damage in combos, but suffers a little in terms of armor break. He also has a special with good damage that can't be used in the air, and as a sky type, that's where he'll spend most of the time. And all the time in full force burst, since you're not allowed to land once you activate it as a sky type. His air combo 4 has really good damage against giants, since it gets stuck on them and continues to hurt them longer than it should. But it takes a while to get to that move, and is kinda inconsistent when you use it. And besides, someone else has a much better giant killer move, which we'll get to later. Pre-time skip is best built with special enhancement, maybe on land attack, and post is probably best made to focus on airborne attack. The lack of 2 full force bursts and losing the Diable Jimbei burst in particular makes post-time skip Sanji worse than pre-time skip. So post is B tier and pre is A tier. Chopper is a technique type with no air combos. His gimmick is that he can inflict scope and then remove it with a charge attack for increased damage. Chopper joins Nami as another character that sucks. Not only is he small with short reach and slow attacks, but he also has poor damage and armor break. His gimmick doesn't do a lot of damage and only works with one move. It might work with specials, but nothing in-game indicates that. I thought maybe the scope would increase damage in general, but that doesn't seem to be the case. His full force burst further increases damage to scope, so maybe, but it still doesn't really give much damage in testing. His specials have good damage, but are easy to escape from and long to recharge. He has a counter special which can come in handy, and a healing special to keep yourself topped up, but be careful, since the heal can be interrupted if you get hit too much before the animation ends. I guess build him for special damage, since that's where his damage comes from, but it still won't really help much. He has some decent defense options, but it still isn't enough to get him out of F tier. Robin is a technique type with no air combos. Her gimmick is that she can spawn a clone that attacks and then mirrors your button inputs. Robin is a strange one. I keep flip-flopping between thinking she's great and thinking she's terrible. On one hand, her moveset is small and without many options, with tricky animations that can be hard to combo off of properly. On the other hand, she doesn't really need that, since her normal attacks do crazy good damage and shred through armor easily. She can tear down single bosses quickly, but her attacks are very focused, and she struggles against multiple enemies at once. Her clone gives her double the attacks, but is tricky to use since it can disappear early if it hasn't finished spawning and you are already attacking again. It will spawn facing certain directions based on which move was used to spawn it, one of which is a counter special, which can lead to different strategies for use, although the amount of setup doesn't really offer much differing results from just spamming normal attacks. She has 2 good damage specials, with Cienfleur Wing grappling an enemy, but still dealing good damage to nearby enemies if it doesn't grab the enemy you wanted. And Dos Fleur, which has great damage, but is limited to only one target. It also has terrible target priority, and will almost always target a minor enemy instead of a boss, effectively wasting the special since minor enemies barely have any health as it is. Your own allies can also hit enemies enough to break them out of the special if you do manage to get the right character. Her Cease Fleur special can stun enemies for a while, but also has a bad hitbox, and doesn't pause armor refill if it hits either. She can also briefly stun enemies with her air normal attack, but it barely lasts a second, so it's not very useful. Her full force burst enhances secondary attacks, which could either mean her clones or just her combo charge attacks? Not really sure. She can work with probably either on-land attack or special attack enhancement. It's tricky to place Robin, but the reliable guard break and potential for big damage sits her, at least for now, at a low S tier for me. Franky is a power type with no air combos. Another fairly simple character, Franky has good damage and guard break from his multi-hit combos. He has good special damage, although General Cannon in particular is quite slow and gives enemies a chance to escape. His non-cinematic General Franky specials give invincibility for the duration, although if you get petrified or a status effect that freezes you while you're in the middle of transforming, you can get stuck and potentially softlock the game and have to completely quit out and come back, since you won't have any control of your character anymore for some reason. But regardless, the General Franky specials have invincibility and good damage and guard break, with General Left in particular having great damage if you can position it correctly and get all the shots to hit. He can also stun enemies briefly, similar to Zoro with his Nipple Light special. All around, good character, works with either on-land attack or special attack enhancement. Franky is A tier. Brook is a speed type with air combos. He has decent damage and armor break, and good special damage, although his specials are slow and can even be interrupted by his own teammates attacking enemies in the middle of the animation. His full force burst claims to enhance his attack and movement speed, although that's how full force burst works anyway, so I'm not sure why they're pointing it out. I don't think it's any better than any other characters. Brook can inflict various status effects, including freeze from his normals and specials, sleep with a charge attack, which worked the same as Usopp's sleep special, and a dance stun with the party music special, which doesn't break armor or pause it, and a special that lets you control Brook's soul and stun minor enemies only for some reason. The special does give invincibility as well though, which is good, but it might be interruptible at the start of the animation, which defeats the purpose of it being an invincibility special. Brook also has a heal special, which can be interrupted. Overall, the focus for Brook is on special attack enhancement for big burst damage after you've broken through armor. He's an okay character, and he would be a lot lower if it wasn't for his heals and defensive options. He's D tier. Next up, we have Whitebeard. Whitebeard is a power type with no air combos, and the first playable giant in the roster. As user-friendly as he could possibly be, Whitebeard is just a big dude who hits really hard. Combination of great damage, great armor break, since giants are inherently good at breaking armor, and great special damage adds up to a great character that can be used in almost any way and still be easily successful. Except for airborne attack, because he doesn't have air moves. So just either give him on-land attack or special attack and you'll be good. Easy S+ tier. Great for beginners or anyone who just wants to take it easy and have fun in a level. Marco is a Sky type. He has good damage and armor break, and despite his attacks feeling a little erratic with how they spin all over the place, he can keep a combo going for a long time without the enemy having a chance to activate burst. Another Sky type with a ground only special, but thankfully it isn't too integral to his kit and he has several other options that are good for combos. He also has a cinematic special that heals after doing damage, meaning you can get a good hit in while safely restoring health if needed. And the health restored is only little, which is good because it won't take as long to get low health again for cheat death. Good character, but nothing crazy. Works best with airborne attack enhancement, B tier. Ace is a speed type with air moves. Ace has a mechanic where you can hold down the button during a charge attack to power up the move. Although, since the moves are pretty weak without charging them, it feels less like powering up a move as much as normal attacks that just take a long time to activate normally. Thankfully, in Full Force Burst, all his moves are instantly powered up with no need to charge. Ace has good damage and good armor break, and he has good special damage, although the 4 stars have odd hitboxes that tend to miss or not carry out the full damage. Some of his lower star specials have good armor break when used consecutively. As alluded to before, Ace is the character with an air move that gets stuck on giants and does big damage. But while Sanji's does a good amount of damage, Ace does so much damage that he can sometimes one-shot a giant with the right setup. Just jumping into the air and using combo 3 and watching a giant's health get shredded from full to nothing is very satisfying. Only potential problem is that it didn't really work on the final boss in story mode on ultra hard difficulty, since his armor kept breaking and Ace suddenly wouldn't get stuck on his model anymore. But it's not a big deal, especially with Ace's Full Force Burst. Ace is our first character who can become fully invincible with Full Force Burst, meaning you don't need to worry about defensive options or skills since you won't be taking damage once you activate Full Force Burst. You might need to watch out once it's empty though, so be careful and build specials back up again so you can activate Full Force Burst and get back in the fight. Ace can be built pretty much any way you like, even airborne attack enhancement with the Giant Killer skill that does more damage to giants if you want to go all in on just killing giants, with his combo 3 in the air. All of this combined makes Ace an S+ tier character. Kaido is a power type with no air combos and our next giant. Similar to Whitebeard, Kaido has great damage and armor break, and even better special damage. Another amazing, easy to use character. Kaido also has a form change, changing into a dragon and becoming a sky type. In this form, Kaido still has good armor break, but his attacks take a dive in quality as they're focused more on big AoE moves that don't do much damage. He also staggers a lot if hit with a big attack in this form. However, his specials are where he really shines, as not only does he have a good damage 4-star special, but he has 2 fantastic low-star specials. One causes ice to rain around him for a few seconds, with each ice block dealing big damage and also freezing the enemy, and the other has Kaido slowly move forwards while channeling lightning around him, and dragging enemies along in front of him. Using both of these at the same time, combined with special damage enhancement, lets you melt enemies from full health to 0 before they even have a chance to act. Definitely works better if you push them up against a wall though, as if there's nothing behind them, you'll keep pushing them forward and they might exit the range of your attacks. On-land attack enhancement also works well for the base form, but special attack can be used just as well in that form as well. Kaido is great in both forms and easily destroys any opposition, landing him firmly at S+ tier. Big Mom is another power type giant with no air combos. She has great armor break as expected of a giant, but her damage is a little less than the other giants. Still good of course, but her attacks are more focused on AoE than focused damage. She can heal with the last hit of her combo 1 by stealing enemies' souls, which is useful as an emergency heal, although you need enemies to hit to activate the heal part. This effect is also in some of her low-star specials, although you're better off using her 4-star specials, which offer really good damage. She also has a dedicated heal special that does damage to enemies and then heals at the end. She's invincible during the move, so no need to worry about the time it takes to get to the healing part. Big Mom also has a form change into a sky type, same as Kaido, complete with lackluster attacks with more range than damage and good specials to make up for it. The difference though is that rather than damage over time like Kaido, Big Mom focuses on single large hits with a lot of damage. Mama Mash in particular, having the biggest range of any special in the game. Special attack enhancement is recommended since she has really good specials all around, and removes the need to decide between decent ground attacks for base form and bad air attacks in form change. Big Mom sits with the other giant emperors at S+ tier. Katakuri is a speed type with air combos. Katakuri can inflict enemies with mochi status, meaning they are stunned for an extended duration. What's crazy about this is that inflicting mochi instantly breaks enemy armor, and prevents it from refilling as well. This means you can start a fight by using a mochi move on an enemy and then spam the same move over and over with no hope of the enemy breaking out. Sometimes they still might unfairly burst and get out, and enemies can also gear up for battle, which makes them immune to status effects. And if an enemy is invincible during full force burst, they're also immune to status effects, forcing you to rely on your other attacks. Thankfully, Katakuri is still really good even without the mochi stun. His attacks are fast and strong and he has great armor break. During full force burst, he summons donuts to assist in his attacks, adding extra arms for more damage and armor break, as well as bigger hitboxes. His damaging specials are pretty good, with good multi-hit lower star specials for combos and decent damage from his cinematic specials, although Buzzcut Mochi has a big run-up before the main damage and can easily miss an enemy. Not bad, but you're better off with his normal attacks. He also has a heal special with invincibility for safe sustainability. Katakuri also has a mechanic where he has a low chance to use Future Sight to dodge incoming enemy attacks, although it's random and gets in the way of combos more than it helps. It's recommended to use on-land attack enhancement, and as well as Great Pirate's Ire, which increases the chance of inflicting status effects on enemies. This is good for consistently trapping enemies and helps with inflicting mochi status on giants as well. Good kit all around, Katakuri is S+ tier. Shanks is a power type with air combos. He has a gimmick where at the end of any normal attack string, he receives a sword buff. This powers up the next charge attack he performs, increasing its range and damage. Without the buff, his damage and armor break leave a lot to be desired. With the buff, he's a bit better, with ground combo 4 doing a fair amount of armor break, except against invincible enemies, which is where you want armor break the most. But overall, he isn't hugely improved by boosting his charge attacks. With having to finish a whole normal string before being allowed to do one somewhat stronger charge attack, Shanks proves that not all of the Emperors are overpowered in this game. He has good but escapable special attacks, and 2 of them can activate the buff for free, which is good, but a one-time use is still too big of a downside. His full force burst also doesn't give him the sword buff for free to compensate. Shanks could have been great, and he certainly isn't trash, but he could have been a lot better. D tier. Blackbeard is a power type with no air combos. Blackbeard can suck enemies into black holes and then smash them out with his quake moves. At first, I thought Blackbeard was terrible due to his slow moves with low damage and poor armor break. His black hole mechanic doesn't do much damage and just stalls before you're able to deal more low damage to the enemy again, which is particularly annoying if Blackbeard is an NPC and sucks enemies into the ground, meaning you have to sit there and wait for him to let them out again before you can attack them as a different character. His full force burst has him constantly suck in enemies around him, which is okay. It's fine. He also has a counter that does the same thing, but loses the effect once the counter activates and does a simple black hole trap to attack the enemy. His one saving grace is his specials. They do a lot of damage, and he can fill his gauges up instantly with his combo 3, as long as you have enough minor enemies around you. Pretty good, but it doesn't matter if the enemy has armor or is invincible. Thankfully, if an enemy is trapped in a black hole, they take more damage, and you can bypass their armor. You still can't suck invincible enemies into a black hole though. But if you trap a bunch of enemies in a black hole and then use a special with as high of an attack boost as you can get from all your skills, you can one-shot entire rooms of bosses. The damage is insane. The only problem is that if he fails to kill an enemy somehow, and then the enemy bursts and they have invincibility, then he's screwed. Because every other move he has sucks, and his specials don't have great armor break. This isn't really a problem on true Pirate Warriors, since he can basically go through the whole level and just one-shot every single character, no problem. But on ultra hard story mode, where enemies were consistently surviving his attacks, he was a terrible pick, and was basically just there to die. Still, if you can set it up right, Blackbeard is a monster. Use special attack enhance and Great Pirate's Ire for easier black hole traps, and he's S+ tier. Bartolomeo is a technique type with no air combos. His gimmick is that he can make enemies angry and then use a ground charge attack to make them run at you and bounce off of your barrier, dealing a small amount of damage. Barto has decent damage and armor break, but nothing too great, especially with his limited technique moveset. His gimmick also doesn't offer much, and if it made enemies take more damage, it would be great, but as far as I know it doesn't, and its intended use is also pretty useless. Full Force Burst makes it easier to inflict in range, but that's not really helpful. Holding the charge attack button makes you invincible and briefly stuns an enemy when they try to hit you, but you're not exactly doing any damage to them, so you're just kind of left at a stalemate until you try attacking them again. Where Barto shines is his instant armor break special, Variability Tarai. He drops a small barrier onto an enemy at a distance, and has great priority, as it always seems to focus on bosses, making it a reliable tool to deal with armor. He also has good special attack damage, with Bari Bari Pistol, in particular, being a bit slow but making up for it by refilling special gauges when it hits. He also has a counter special, which is nice for safety. Barto is probably best built for special damage, as that's where his strengths lie, and he's a pretty good character, but not broken, so he sits at A tier. Cavendish is a speed type with air combos. He has fast attacks with good damage, good armor break, and good special damage. He has a heal special that doesn't make him invincible, but seemingly resists knockback, so it isn't interruptible. He also has an instant armor break special, although it's slow and has short range. On top of this, Cavendish can also form change into his alter ego Hakuba, dealing damage upon activation. His moveset and type don't change, but he becomes even faster and does more damage with easier armor break. He has good combos, which are helped by his low star specials that contribute good damage and armor break and even give short invincibility. His 4-star special also has good damage and armor break. Cavendish can also briefly transform into Hakuba for some specials in base form, which send him to sleep after use, the same as his form change when it ends. Not a big deal, as you can't be hurt during the animation, but you still have to try and break out of being asleep. Great character, Cavendish can be built pretty much any way you like. S tier. Law is a technique type with air combos. His gimmick is that he has to create a room sphere before he can attack, as his attacks only work inside that space. You can set up a room early with a charge attack, but if you try to attack too soon after creating it, he'll do the technique normal after charge attack move and erase the room you just set up. So you may as well just get used to the extra animation at the start of your normal attacks where he has to summon the room. Law has decent damage and guard break. It can be tricky to use the right move as his animations sometimes blend together and it can be hard to time correctly, especially for his air attacks. Law can also inflict a target debuff onto enemies that actually does make them take more damage, and he can use either his ground combo 3 or the scan special, and cancel it before it removes the target to do its intended use of stealing money from enemies. This, coupled with Law's already great special damage, means he can do even more damage to enemies. No Turning Back in particular is quick and has huge range, which is great to finish a combo. Law's Full Force Burst makes his rooms bigger, which increases the range of his attacks, but even better is that he is also an invincibility character, meaning you can safely break armor and set up your big damage with no fear of being interrupted. He also has a counter special, but that's not necessary due to the invincibility from Full Force Burst, unless you need safety after you exit Full Force Burst while you're trying to fill it up again. You can probably build Law for either land or air attack, but special damage is where he shines, so that's probably your best bet. He doesn't need to worry about defense either, which leaves room to use both resilience and devotion for max full force burst time, and therefore max invincibility time. Great character, S tier. Kid is a power type with air moves. His mechanic is that he can build up metal on his arms to increase his damage and armor break, and change his attacks slightly. He can build them up by 2 levels. He can also repel his metal, removing his arms and dealing range damage. Without any metal, his attacks are small and pretty weak. With metal, his attacks are much better with good damage and decent armor break. He can build his arms by 1 level with combo 2, or instantly build them to max with his Full Force Burst or his Absorb special. Full Force Burst also amplifies his metal arm attacks. At first, this makes him seem pretty good. But unfortunately, Kid loses all of his metal if he gets knocked back by an enemy. And despite being a power type and a tough character in general, Kid is very easily knocked back. That means that you can't focus on fighting enemies, since any engagement will have a high chance of removing your good damage and sending you flying backwards. You'll end up spending more time setting up the arms than actually using them. Even if you try to ignore the arms and just use his basic attacks or just repel any metal you get immediately, you still get knocked away constantly. You can use the tenacity skill to try and offset this, since it gives knockback resistance, but then you'll just take more damage without getting any knockback for safety. Also, having to use a skill slot just to remedy this problem removes his potential for other good builds, as is the case for other defensively weak characters that rely on skills to keep them safe instead of being able to use more offensive skills for better damage. He has really good special damage, but the hits are often slow and escapable, leaving you to fight potentially invincible enemies with all of the problems previously mentioned. Kid is probably best built for special damage, since he can potentially one-shot if you can get it to work right, Maybe on land attack if you want to bear with it and try and use his normal attacks. But he's another good character that had good potential. He's another character that had good potential, but is held back by one fatal flaw. D tier. Hawkins is a technique type with no air combos. His gimmick is that he can inflict bad luck on enemies, which can be activated with a charge attack to cause objects to fall and deal damage to enemies. Objects are random and can be anywhere from low damage boxes to higher damage lightning, meteors, or even ice that can freeze enemies. Hawkins has good damage and armor break, with his gimmick being a very reliable source of damage. His full force burst says unlucky actions make it easier to strike enemies, but I'm not entirely sure what that means. Either way, he has the chance of escape 0% special that emits an aura that constantly activates any bad luck around him. So if you keep inflicting it on enemies around you, you'll have a constant stream of high damage objects falling for a set duration. Hawkins also has a counter that can refill special gauges a little, and a heal special that is interruptible. His damaging specials are good too, with straw bullets dealing huge damage if enemies get caught in it, and it drags them along for a higher chance, although it can still miss. And 2 Strawman specials, one of which just has regular damage, while the other lets you control the Strawman for a bit, making you invincible and letting you attack with quick normal attacks for juggling and a charge attack for a single bigger hit that pushes enemies away. Although you are slow in this form and you can struggle to keep up with enemies if you push them away too far. At the end of the control duration, you release a large damaging attack, similar to the non-control form of the special. I'm not sure what damage type the bad luck objects fall under, so feel free to either focus on just his ground attacks that will be inflicting the bad luck, or just go for his special attack to focus on attacks like straw bullets that already do a lot and make them do even more. Surprisingly great character, S tier. Bege is a technique type with no air combos. His gimmick is that he can summon soldiers with his charge attacks to fight alongside him. Soldiers' attacks will differ from Bege and correspond to which attack he used while summoning them. Bege himself has pretty bad normal attacks. They focus on being slow sprays of multi-hit bullets, but even the combined damage of each bullet doesn't equal one normal attack from most characters. His charge attacks are okay, but definitely rely on his soldiers for his main damage and armor break. The idea with Bege is that he has 3 specials that summon multiple soldiers in different formations. His normal attacks can only bring out 2 dudes normally, so he needs these specials to be used effectively. Once summoned, the soldiers will shoot bullets in front or around them, which can also refill special gauges pretty well. And once Bege uses an applicable move or special, they will join in and aim where Bege is attacking. The damage from these attacks is much better than without the formations, but requires a lot of setup just to do decent damage and armor break. The damage is also unreliable since enemies can freely just move out of the way, leaving Bege and his army to pack up and move over and set up all over again. Resummoning the soldiers also takes a while as well, since they need to leave and then reappear before they can be used. Also, the animation can't be cancelled. Bege's full force burst also has minor allies join in on the commands, but bosses are usually in their own territory, and you can't capture their territory until you beat them, so you can't capture it and then use all the allies you just made spawn, since that can't work. The full clip special has decent guard break, but isn't too reliable. The Big Father special is a good safe tool for big damage and armor break over a wide area, but isn't really great for KOs. It doesn't do a ton of damage. Bege has a counter with good special gauge refill, and if there are enough enemies, he can continuously spam it for free damage with invincibility, although this is slow and unreliable if you don't have enough enemies around you. Once again, I'm not sure what damage type the soldiers from the formations fall under, so feel free to either use on-land attack enhancement or special attack enhancement. Bege has a lot of tools, but none are that good, leaving him stuck in E tier. Mihawk is a power type with air combos. He has a mechanic where he can continuously use his normal attack string up to 3 times, each time giving his sword a buff that speeds up attacks and increases the range and damage of his charge attacks. His attacks start off slow, but by the end they are so fast it's easy to mess up the timing and do the wrong charge attack or even none at all. In the air, he always has max charge. Regardless, his damage is good, and the continuous attacks help to consistently chip away at armor. His specials also deal good damage and armor break. It can be tedious to try and get the max sword buff for his combos, and his full force burst also doesn't give it for free, like Shanks. And his easy method of max charge cancelling from Pirate Warriors 3 was removed, so that isn't an option either. Thankfully, there's a trick you can do to keep full charge. After finishing a charge combo, if you dash at just the right time and immediately begin attacking again, you will still have the same sword charge and can continue using it over and over, provided you can consistently keep the trick going while also keeping track of the enemies you're trying to hit. It can also be annoying if you accidentally dash into the air and lose the trick. Mihawk is best built with on-land attack, but special attack can work too. There's also a weird strategy I saw where someone equipped the Hidden Resolve skill to refill his stamina with every time he used a special, and then he spammed Combo 2 in the air to refill his special gauges, so that he could repeatedly use specials in the air to refill his stamina and stay in the air forever. I'm not sure if that's good, but it might be worth checking out. Either way, he's a good character all around. Mihawk is A tier. Jimbei is a power type with no air combos. Jimbei is a bit of an unfortunate character. His armor break is terrible, and his damage is also not good enough to compensate. He has good specials, with Vagabond Drill dealing really good damage that might offset the need to re-break armor, but if you mess up, then it's over. Great Sea Current Kick is also good, but has an odd hitbox that drags enemies along, and it won't activate the final big hit of the special if you miss the first part. His Full Force Burst gives him flinch immunity, so he won't get knocked back, something I wish Kid had, and he even resists enemy interrupts, which is great, but it doesn't reduce damage taken, so it's just more chances to take damage, since you're not getting knocked away. On-land attack or special attack for max Vagabond Drill damage would probably work best, but Jimbei still suffers from that poor armor break and sits down at E tier. Doflamingo is a Sky type. He has good damage and armor break and can inflict parasite strings on enemies for a long stun that doesn't break or pause armor. He can also spawn tentacles from the ground with Ground Combo 2 and the Ever White special. The special spawns a lot more over a wider area. And these tentacles attack in tandem with Doffy's normal attacks by spinning every time he attacks. This gives pretty good damage and combo potential over a wide area, and the tentacles can also be destroyed with the Break White special for extra damage. He has good damaging specials, but two of his really good ones, Birdcage and Godthread, can only be used on the ground, which means in Full Force Burst he won't be able to use them at all. Thankfully, Doffy is still completely viable if you forego his Full Force Burst in favour of building him for special damage only, since he can parasite enemies to hold them still for specials that do a lot of damage and also reapply parasite for good measure. Either playstyle is good, but his main source of damage is his Air Combo 4. He applies parasite to a wide area and sends his enemies running forward and then spins them around. For some reason, the spin does huge damage for each enemy affected, multiplied by the amount of enemies affected. So, if you can get a cluster of enemies caught and swarm them all around a boss, and then cancel it before he hits with the final attack to leave them spinning, their health and their armor get shredded in an instant. The attack leaves them at 1 HP, but any attack will finish them off, or you can just wait for the attack to end and they'll just die once they stop spinning. Requires a good amount of minor enemies to get consistent damage, but even if you can't get many enemies for the attack, he still has other good options as backup. He also has a counter special that applies Parasite if he's hit as a safety net, but it can't be used in the air. So, once again, not during Full Force Burst. Fantastic character with multiple viable playstyles, Doflamingo is S+ tier. Crocodile is a Sky type, but he shouldn't be. The designers of this game had the idea that anyone who can suspend themselves in the air should automatically be a Sky type, no questions asked. Apparently that goes for Crocodile too, Even though he doesn't really fly a lot, it's more like turning to sand and dashing around, but I guess that's enough to count as flying. Ace and Sabo are the same, but they get to be speed types, so what gives? Makes less sense when you remember Croc's attacks revolve around affecting the ground and drawing sand from his surroundings, which translates into gameplay as him having two really good specials that only work on the ground. Another sky type with ground-only specials. His air attacks aren't good enough to make up for it either. His damage is low and his armor break is bad too. His attacks have wide range but lack damage as a result. He can heal with his air combo 1, which is nice, but not really necessary since his full force burst gives him invincibility anyway. And that's great and all, because it gives him time to attack as much as he wants, as safely as he wants for the duration. But it still doesn't make up for how low his damage is. Neither does the poison that gets added to his hook attacks during full force bursts, as that also barely seems to do any damage. If he was a power type, they could have given him a great ground-based moveset that worked in tandem with his specials for great damage, plus the invincibility from his full force burst for great defense. He has a good damaging air compatible special with Sables, but the rest of his air specials are all low stars and they don't do like any good damage. Playing around with Doflamingo using no full force burst and only special damage gave me the idea to try it with Crocodile as well, and what do you know it, he's better that way. Desert Girasoli and Ground Death do great damage and armor break and can even one-shot with the right setup. You can also still bring full force burst for an emergency invincibility if you need it, giving you the chance to safely use combo 1 in the air to heal. Normally I would recommend airborne attack for this character, but in this case, just use special attack and then other skills that don't rely on going into full force burst. I would have put Crocodile a lot lower because of how bad his attacks are, but this discovery of just using special attacks moves him up to at least A tier. He'd be even higher if sky types could use ground specials during their full force burst, but because they constantly have to stay in the air, they're not allowed to. It's stupid. Hancock is a technique type with no air combos. Her gimmick is that she can turn people to stone, which can pause armor refill but doesn't instantly break it. And then break the petrified enemies for extra damage. Hancock has decent armor break but good damage, and can use her charge then normal attack to quickly loop back into normal attacks. Other technique characters are usually too slow to actually utilize this to loop back into their normal attacks. Breaking stone enemies doesn't do much damage, and you're better off leaving them as long as possible for more chances at damaging an armor break. She has good special damage with Perfume Femur and Snake Pit Dance having good armor break as well. Slave Arrow inflicts stone along with its good damage, and Perfume Femur inflicts stone for the duration of the attack, but with the final hit removes the stone. She also has a counter special that inflicts stone when it activated, and her full force burst also makes her normal attacks inflict stone. Not a bad character, but could definitely use a bit more damage or consistent armor break. I guess outfit her with either normal attacks or special damage, but she's still only C tier. Buggy is a technique type with no air combos. His gimmick is that he can leave his arms behind to spin around and continuously attack enemies. He can use his normal attack string, an air charge attack, ground combo 3, or the activation of his counter special to detach his hands. The counter special is also able to refill special gauges when activated. Once detached, his normal attacks become a 1-2 kick and his charge attack spins his legs around in a circle. Spinning limbs already do a lot of damage and armor break, but his kicks from his normal attacks do as well. Combined, Buggy is capable of lots of damage in a short amount of time and can finish enemies off easily with his highly damaging 4-star specials. His Chop Chop Festival, Flashy Capital Punishment, and Chop Chop Surprise Clown specials also have good armor break. His Full Force Burst gives his detached arms more health, although I've never really seen them be defeated regardless. I'm not sure what more health helps with. And it also seems to give the limbs a larger radius. At least it looks that way. It could just be a change in the animation, but I don't know, they don't detail it. You can fit him with either on-land attack to enhance his limbs, or special attack to have an easier time finishing foes off once you've broken their armor. Buggy certainly surprised me with how good he is, coming in at a flashy S tier. Akainu is a power type with air combos. He can place craters with a standard charge attack on the ground and in the air that explode alongside his combo charge attack for extra damage. He can spawn an extra 3 with the crater eruption special, combining the big damage these craters do with Akainu's good armor break and great damage means that with a bit of setup, Akainu can destroy an enemy's health with a single attack. All combos activate craters, but combo 1 gives the best and most consistent results. His full force burst also makes him invincible, so he can take as much time as he wants to set up and focus on building for as much damage as possible. He also builds special gauges fast, which lets you get back into full force burst as quick as possible. Akainu has good damaging specials, with Meteor Volcano and Volcano Flock having good armor break. Great Eruption refilling special gauges, and Volcano Explosion dealing big damage in random locations around Akainu that can aid in combos. Great Lava Flow gives invincibility for the duration, but Full Force Burst makes that redundant, and it doesn't do much else anyway. Akainu is an extreme powerhouse that can be built with either on-land attack or special attack enhancement to incinerate everything before him from the safety of his invincible magma body. One of the top 3 best characters in the game. Kizaru is a Sky type. He has pretty good damage and armor break all around, with Air Combo 2 in particular being the go-to for both. His specials do decent damage, with Yasakani no Magatama having good armor break but nothing crazy. And 3 Sacred Treasures also has a weird area of effect that is likely to miss. It's also lower damage and amount of stars than I would have expected for being in a special that's like all 3 of his strongest moves in one. It's weird. His Full Force Burst also makes him invincible, which brings him up a tier higher than he would be. A pretty good but simple character, just give him airborne attack and you're all set. Barely makes it into S tier. Fujitora is a power type with air combos. He suspends himself in the air with a meteor using his gravity powers, but they didn't make him a sky type because he needed to be another exception to the if they can fly then they're sky rule. Rip Crocodile. His attacks have a lot of flair with all the gravity manipulation, but they don't do much damage or armor break. He can squash enemies on the ground with ground combo 3, but it doesn't stun for long, so it doesn't have much use. His charged meteor attack from Pirate Warriors 3 is back, but severely nerfed, taking a long time to charge for barely any damage compared to the one-shot room clearing potential it had before. His special damage is good though, with Gravity Blade Raging Tiger having great damage, and War Drums also having good damage for a non-cinematic special. He also has the Barrier Break special that pulls enemies into a circle of gravity, keeping them in one spot for you to focus your attacks and specials on. Then it drops a meteor on them for extra good damage. On-land attack can improve his attacks a bit, but special attacks is your best bet. Special attack enhance is your best bet to get as much damage in one go as you can with Raging Tiger. Not a bad character, but barely stays in D tier. Smoker is a Sky type. He has a gimmick where he can inflict smoke on enemies, which can be activated with a jump attack, Air Combo 1, Air Combo 4, the White Fist special or the White Spark special to pull all afflicted enemies toward him. Smoker is kinda bad. His damage is low, his armor break is low. His ground charge attack might be good, but it's a ground move, so you can't use it during his full force burst, because he's Sky. And his special damage is also low. His low star specials in particular being real bad. White Hound has good armor break, but is also easily escapable and almost seems to encourage enemies to activate burst. He also has a ground only special that doesn't even do much damage to make up for it. His only saving grace is his full force burst, which makes him invincible. Pretty much the best defensive option in the game, but it isn't enough to make up for everything else being terrible. I guess you can give him airborne attack enhancement? E tier, barely makes it out of F because of the full force burst. Tashigi is a speed type with no air combos. Just like Smoker before her, she too is terrible. Her armor break is okay, but she has low damage. Her moveset in general is another example of the changes from Pirate Warriors 3 to Pirate Warriors 4 affecting some characters badly. With the change to speed type losing her combos from charge attacks, and the removal of her unique action severely limiting her combos. Before, she could choose a different combo move based on if she used the unique action during an attack while moving or stationary, as well as a slow charge move that did a lot of damage and could have the charge time lowered via skills. Now, the slow move is her ground charge attack and has had its damage reduced by a lot, with no way to quicken the charge time. The combo moves have been changed into low star specials, with Feint being a quick, decent damage combo option, and Spring being a quick but short range attack that often misses, dropping the combo. So the moves are still there, but require charging special gauges now instead of just pressing a button. Her specials have good damage, with Odoriferous Butterfly and Floating Cloud having good armor break. However, Odoriferous Butterfly can get stuck on a wall and have all of its hits wasted, and all specials can get stuck on giants and not do the full damage. Special attack enhancement is probably the best choice, but on-land attack could work if you don't mind sifting through the entire speed moveset looking for a move that doesn't suck. There aren't any. Terrible character and no defensive or utility options mean Tashigi is not only F tier, but one of the worst characters in the game. Lucci is a Sky type. Lucci can change between his human and hybrid forms for different ways of attacking. He can change to the opposite of his current form with a ground charge attack, and his ground combo charge attacks will always change him to hybrid, while his air combos will always change him to human. The differences in forms come from his normal attacks, with human being quicker and hybrid being stronger. Lucci also loses a valuable tool in his moveset, same as Tashigi, as he used to be able to change at any time and could even cancel his attacks with the unique action. He still had to be a certain form for certain attacks, which is the same, but it's also a bit strange that his hybrid form, which is his stronger form, is stuck on the ground, while his human form, the weaker form, gets to be in the air where all the good air moves are, as a Sky type. Thankfully, none of this prevents Lucci from being a good character. His damage, his armor break, and his special damage are all good. His full force burst doesn't limit his potential either, as his air charge attack is able to change his form while full force burst is active. Also, while in hybrid form during a full force burst, for some reason he loses the final hit of his air normals and can keep attacking forever, with no end to his regular normal string. It's not an infinite combo and enemies can get out if they want, but I mean, it's funny, it's kind of useful anyway. His special attacks also change his form, with 6 King Pistol, Finger Pistol Spots, and Hattori changing him into a human, and Ultimate Radius 6 King Pistol and Flying Finger Pistol Sting changing him to hybrid. Tempest Kick special changes depending on which form you're in, although both of them are bad, so it's not worth it. Flying Finger Pistol Sting has a weird hitbox and is easy to miss, but does great damage and armor break if you get it to hit. It's easy to hit on giants. The 6 King Pistol specials are great, but get delayed and might miss if you use them in one form and have to change to the other one while activating them. Hattori is a heal special, but instead of just healing from the special itself, Lucci sends out his bird to fetch a healing item for him. It takes a second, but it spawns an item as close to you as possible when it arrives, meaning you can outrun it and you aren't forced to heal if you don't need it yet, but you can also be knocked away from it by an enemy. The initial cast of the bird can also be interrupted and you can't use the special in the air. Airborne attack or special attack can both work. Lucci manages to overcome the system changes that aim to screw him over and secures himself a spot in A tier. Kuzan is a technique type with air combos. His gimmick involves freezing enemies and then breaking them out with a ground or air charge attack. He's similar to Hancock in that regard, with freeze also pausing guard but not breaking it. He has good damage, good armor break, and good special damage. His ice breaking doesn't do much damage, but his sledgehammer special does increase damage to frozen enemies and is surprisingly good, sometimes dealing more damage to giants than it should. His Ice Star special has its hitbox changed from Pirate Warriors 3, and has gone from a great special to a bad one that barely ever hits. Icicle Tempest has good damage and armor break, but can miss and completely just not activate if you don't hit with the first hit. His full force burst gives invincibility, and it makes his normal attacks also freeze enemies. He has a counter that can refill special gauges, but isn't necessary due to his invincibility. You can fit Kuzan with pretty much any damage setup you want, with resilience and devotion both being possible due to not needing defensive skills. A good character alongside the invincibility, Kuzan is S tier. Sabo is a speed type with air combos. He has good armor break, but his damage is just okay. His special damage is great and should be the focus of his build, although Flame Dragon King's initial multi-hits allow enemies to escape and burst before you get to the main damage of the special. His full force burst also gives him invincibility. Not really much else to say, honestly. His normals are only really good for attempting to break armor so that you can get more damage from his specials. Other than that, his invincibility carries him up to low S tier, otherwise he'd be lower than S, but he's invincible, and that's great. Ivankov is a technique type with air combos. His gimmick is that he can give himself face growth hormones to increase the size and damage of attacks and specials that involve winking. There are 3 levels of the buff, with ground combo 2 and 3 as well as air combo 3 giving 1 level at a time, and the face growth synthesis special giving max level immediately. The moves and specials powered up by this don't use the charge up, but his ground and air basic charge attacks do. And they use the whole thing up at once. His power dash also refills specials by a lot for some reason. He has good damage, but his armor break isn't that good. His specials have good damage, with healing synthesis restoring a little health and giving 2 levels of face growth. He also has a counter that can refill special gauges and also gives 1 level of face growth. He also has the face growth injection special that grows the heads of minor enemies, causing them to fall over. You can then knock them around and send them rolling into enemies. I'm not sure if the damage is good or not, as getting them to roll into enemies is tricky and I couldn't test it well enough. His full force burst constantly gives him max face level and it won't be depleted no matter what. Ivankov can be built for any damage increase since he doesn't shine too much in any one area other than maybe his specials. A good but slow character that struggles a little to break armor, C tier. Carrot is a speed type with air combos. She can inflict enemies with shock, which instantly breaks armor and prevents it from refilling. Similar to Katakuri, she can stun lock enemies with a status effect that she can easily re-inflict. However, unlike Katakuri, her armor break isn't that good, so if an enemy escapes and bursts with invincibility, she's going to have a tough time breaking armor again since they'll be immune to status effects. Her damage is still good, and her special damage is too, with Electrical Shower providing good damage, combo potential, and more shock infliction. Very good for a low star special. Her full force burst gives her normal attacks the ability to inflict shock as well, so there are more opportunities to keep the stun going. She can be given any good damage boost, although airborne attack might actually be good, as her air combos are some of the easiest to keep enemies stunned with shock. Great Pirate's Ire is also good for more consistent stun, as well as easier infliction on giants. She's S tier if you can keep an enemy trapped until you KO them. Reiju is a sky type. She has a mechanic where she can use her ground moves to inflict and then absorb poison from enemies to increase the range and damage of her air combos and her ground standard charge attack. There are around 3 levels of poison, but the amount gained is determined by the amount of enemies hit with poison moves, so I'm not really sure how the levels really work. She uses up her poison reserves with each time that she uses a move that uses poison. She's not terrible without poison, but she's really good if you can build it up, dealing really good damage and armor break. Thankfully, her full force burst gives constant full poison. Most specials do more damage with poison stacks, with Pink Sky High and Pink Needle also gaining invincibility. The exceptions to this are Pink Tornado and Pink Hornet, which instead inflict poison to be absorbed for more poison stacks. This is redundant in full force burst. Pink Ray in particular has really good special damage and armor break, but is thin and hard to aim for the short duration it is active. Pink Hornet and Pink Impact also have terrible hitboxes. Her best tool is her Air Combo 3, which is a multi-hit move that shreds through health and armor for massive damage. The damage is still good even without poison stacks. The only downside is that it's quite short range and the enemy can either easily jump out of the way or just hit you out of it. And you're quite vulnerable while you're doing it since you're just still and you don't move. Great character nonetheless. Just use airborne attack enhancement for more damage on that air combo 3. S tier character. Now, the Vinsmoke brothers, Ichiji, Niji, and Yonji are all sky types. Their gimmick is that they share a lot of moves and specials and can call on each other for help. If a move or special belongs to a brother, they perform it like a character normally would. But if it isn't theirs, they can act independently from the brother that they send in to do the attack for them. They all have good damage, good armor break, and good special damage. There are 3 different ways to play the brothers, technically only 2 for Niji. The first is just playing them normally, equipping airborne attack enhancement and playing them like you would any character. The second is by spamming their ground charge attack, which summons Niji to dash forward for a quick attack. It can be spammed by Ichiji and Yonji for repeated damage that's not amazing, but it's good and consistent and still viable to just sit there and spam it, and it refills specials really well. Niji, however, cannot do this because he's the one dashing, so he can't spam the attack like the other 2 can. This also cannot be done during Full Force Burst since they are sky types and it is a ground move. The third, and probably strongest build, is focusing on special attack damage. Each brother has a unique move that does a lot of damage and armor break, as well as the Black Bug special that they all have that does good damage. But the main point of interest are the shared low star specials. Every brother gets 2 of their own, as well as the 2 that each other brother gets. Ichiji has a special called Sparking Blast, and Niji has a special called Henry Cracker. These are multi-hit specials that shred through armor and do good damage. Ichiji and Niji have to commit to doing their specials while having their other brother come in for the other, while Yonji gets access to both as independent specials that he can quickly call in one after the other, technically making him the strongest of the 3 brothers. If you use concentration to get these back as quick as possible, they can be your reliable main source of damage. All of them are S tier, with Yonji being the best. Smoothie is a power type with air combos. Her gimmick is similar to Reiju in that she absorbs liquid from enemies to power up the range and damage of her charge attacks. She can use ground combo 1 and 2 as well as an air charge attack to absorb liquid. It doesn't have levels, you just absorb once and get around 5 attacks worth of powered up moves. Her human mixer and smooth criminal specials are also enhanced by liquid, but use it all up immediately and aren't good with or without it. She's decent without any liquid, but having it makes her a lot better, with good damage and good armor break. She has good damaging high star specials, a heal special that is interruptible, and an instant armor break special that also gives liquid. Her Full Force Burst doesn't give her max liquid all the time, but she does have a form change that keeps her regular moveset the same and just makes her a giant, and gives her constant max liquid for the duration. It also does damage on activation. As a giant, Smoothie gains great damage and armor break, as is typical of the other playable giants, and her already large range moves grow even more to cover the biggest attack range in the game. She still has an instant armor break move, as well as a huge damage 4-star special, and a special that continuously spawns geysers around her for a set duration. You can build Smoothie for on-land attack or special attack, she's great either way. Already a great character that can change into an overpowered giant, Smoothie is S+ tier. Cracker is a speed type with air combos. His damage, armor break, and special damage are all good, and he can pin enemies to the ground with combo 3, but you need to break armor and it doesn't pause refill. Normally he'd be good with just that, but Cracker can use his combo 2 to enter his biscuit armor for a limited time to do a few slashes of his sword. The armor break from this move is great, comparable to that of a giant, and he's invincible for the duration. He can also use the biscuit armor special to enter the armor for a longer time and control it, with normal attacks being a 1-2 sword slash and charge attack being a single strong stab. The attacks are a bit slow, but can be sped up if you use full force burst before entering the armor. Once again, he is invincible while in the armor, and has good damage and great armor break. This would also be good if that was it, but there's one more thing. If he activates the Biscuit Armor special while he's already in the armor from his combo 2, the armor becomes infinite, and he never leaves unless you use a power dash to cancel it yourself. Normally he fills special gauges while in armor, but he doesn't fill the armor's gauge itself. However, after the armor's normal duration ends, and you don't exit it because of the glitch, you can start refilling the armor's special gauge as well. So, you can make sure all your specials are ready to go and safely exit the armor to reapply full force burst and get back in the armor without taking any damage. With this in mind, you can build him completely offensively and focus on making his normal attacks in biscuit form as strong as possible. I try not to be too biased with these characters, since this is supposed to be as objective as possible. So I kept trying to downplay Cracker, as he's one of my favorite characters in One Piece, and I don't want to rank him higher than he deserves just because I like him a lot. But after trying him out on the ultra hard story mode and seeing how important defensive options are, invincibility in particular, I can't deny the value of an infinite and on-demand invincibility whenever he wants. Cracker sits firmly as one of the top 3 characters in the game. Judge is a Sky type. He has good damage, armor break, and special damage. His air combos can be somewhat erratic, but are still good. He shares some charge attack animations with his sons, but he can't summon them outside of his Germa 66 special that summons everybody for a cinematic 4-star special. His electromagnetic shaft special has good armor break, and his electromagnetic cyclone has both good damage and armor break, and is one of his best tools in his kit. He also has an instant armor break special in electromagnetic crack, although it requires a bit of a run-up and can easily miss if you're too close. Another simple but good character, Judge can be built for airborne attack or special attack and is a solid A tier. Drake is a speed type with air combos. He has good damage, armor break, and special damage. His specials also have good armor break. His attacks gain extra range and damage while in full force burst. Drake is already a really solid character in his base form, but he also gets a form change that makes him even better. He can change into an Allosaurus and become a power type giant with no air combos. As a giant, he gets great damage and armor break, as well as a 4-star special with huge damage. He also has a special that charges forward, which might have good special gauge refill. Drake is fantastic and can be built for either on land or special attack enhancement, and be great either way. Easy S+ tier character. Killer is a speed type with no air combos. He has pretty good damage and armor break, and his 4-star specials have good damage and armor break as well, but are easily escapable. His combo 1 claims to have extra armor break, but literally does nothing. If it had really good or even instant armor break, Killer would be amazing, but he doesn't. It doesn't do anything. The rest of his moves feel like they're meant to be comboed into each other, but he doesn't really have an easy tool for that, other than just dashing to do combos, but everyone can do that. Killer can create a tornado with both his combo 2 that travels forward, as well as the Gale Storm special that creates a stationary one. Combining both of these with normal attacks gives Killer an easier time breaking armor. In Full Force Burst, Killer has extra attack range, but the main draw is his faster attacks that contribute more to his damage and armor break. Killer is probably best fitted with on-land attack enhancement, but special attack could work too. A decent character that could have been better if his combo 1 actually did something. B tier. Rouge is a power type with no air combos. He has good damage from both his charge attacks and his 4-star specials, while his armor break is just decent. He has a heal special that can be interrupted. The main draw to Rouge is his form change, which changes him into a giant version of himself similar to Smoothie. The form change itself is only 3 stars, but that's just to make it easier to activate and take less special charge, and doesn't lessen how strong the form is. Upon activation, enemies take damage around Rouge, but he takes damage as well, as the form is based on Rouge's Devil Fruit that increases his strength the more damage he takes. Fittingly, this makes him a prime candidate for cheat death, as losing health is literally built into his kit. As a giant, the Colossus form has great damage and armor break, and very good special damage. He also has a built-in auto counter that activates upon taking a big hit or even when interrupted by an enemy's red interrupt, and gives Arouge an extra attack boost, the same that you get from items and the hero's strength skill. Another strong character, Arouge can be built for on-land attack or special attack, and still do well. He would be higher alongside Smoothie and Drake, but his base form isn't as strong as theirs, despite his form change being potentially the best of the three. You also need to watch out so that you don't reduce your health too much with the form change, as you can't kill yourself with the damage, but you can reduce your health to 1, which leaves you 1 hit away from dying, and you'll die the second you take any damage. So he's not quite S+, but he's still S tier. Kinemon is a technique type with no air combos. His gimmick is that his combo charge attacks leave behind flames on the ground that can be activated with a ground or air charge attack to explode and deal damage. He can also gather the flames together with his technique charge attack then normal attack, which in his character tutorial is referred to as an absorption attack, which, because of that, it's never referred to that anywhere else in the game, so I didn't know what it was until testing and randomly found that that move works. So I guess they're called absorption, but I don't know. Either way, if you use it on the flames he leaves behind, they combine to create a battle pyre. The more flames gathered into a pyre, the stronger it will be when it's activated. At maximum power, from around 3, more likely 4 flames, the explosion is huge and fireballs rain down around the area. The damage from the flames and pyres is decent, with the fireballs in particular having good damage and armor break but being tricky to land. His attacks don't do much damage and he has low armor break as well. He has good special damage, and his specials can also activate flames and pyres for big damage, but his 2 biggest specials have weird hitboxes, with Fire Willow Flash spinning forward too far from where you want it to land, and Blaze Slice starting with a long range attack and then having a very close range attack right afterwards. He has a counter special for defense. His Full Force Burst lets him leave 2 fires at a time instead of 1, which makes it easier to make pyres. Kinemon has a game plan based around setting up pyres and activating them with specials, but it's ruined by being easily knocked back, having tricky special hitboxes, and bad armor break. If you can set it up just right, then you can do a lot of damage, and the fireballs can pick off any potentially remaining health to help secure one-shots, but it's tricky and inconsistent. I'm not sure what damage type the flames and the pyres are, but special damage is probably what you want, since activating pyres with specials yields the most damage. Kinemon can do good total damage, but it takes a lot of setup and isn't consistent, leaving him a spot in E tier. Okiku is a speed type with an air moveset. Kiku has a mechanic where if you press normal attack after a charge attack, she sheathes her weapon with a white light, letting you chain attacks together without having to dash, and also boosting the damage and range of her charge combos. It can't be used in the air. Kiku has good damage and armor break, as well as specials with good damage and armor break. She can also inflict freeze with certain attacks. Her Full Force Burst gives her another unique mechanic, where she can continue pressing the charge attack button during certain moves to repeat them 2 more times. The moves that can be repeated are combo 1, 2, 3, and 6 on the ground, as well as a ground charge attack. She may also gain freeze on more moves, but I'm not sure. The biggest improvement, however, is that combo 2 also gains instant armor break if it is repeated. Kiku is probably best built with on-land attack, but special attack could work too. A great character, and one that is actually intentionally built for long combos. The instant armor break is fantastic, but it's only available during Full Force Burst, so Kiku is S tier, and not S+. Oden is a power type with air combos. He can buff his swords with Haki to increase the range and damage of his attacks. He automatically buffs them at the start of a normal attack string, but can pre-buff them with a ground charge attack. He has good damage and can combo enemies very well. He also has the same icon Killer does to indicate an armor break move, which worried me when he first came out because Killer's didn't work and he ended up not being a great character. Thankfully, Oden's works. In fact, he has not 1, but 2 charge attacks that instantly break armor. They're both quick and easy to get to, as they are the first combos on land and in the air. He also has the Gun Modoki special that instant breaks armor and does good damage. He has some other non-cinematic specials that deal good armor damage, and one called Pursuit of Peace that also gives the sword buff, but this is irrelevant because he has 3 instant armor breaking moves. He also has some of, if not the highest special damage in the game, with his 2 4-star specials, Paradise Waterfall and Paradise Totsuka. They can also be powered up with the sword buff for more damage. Sometimes, chaining a special from an attack doesn't carry the sword buff over, and you would need to make sure you have the buff before using a special, but that's not a problem thanks to his full force burst giving him constant sword buff for the duration. So Oden gameplay is basically walk up, insta-break armor, use a big special, move on to the next enemy, because they're already dead. Even on ultra hard, he still takes about half of a big boss's health, so all you need to do is turn back to the enemy and use the other special and they're probably gone. And even if they burst, you can just immediately remove it and get back to destroying them again. If you don't have his specials charged, his normal attacks are also good enough to just combo from full to dead anyway. Oden has one defensive option in his taunt, where he pulls out an Oden Feast and heals a large amount of health. So essentially, you always have a heal special equipped, with room for your 4 other specials as well. I'm not sure if it recharges based on time or if it has a special gauge that just isn't visible, but it does eventually come back and can be used repeatedly. Oden can be built for anything, but special damage is the best choice. One of the most broken characters, Oden sits comfortably in the top 3 best characters in the game. Alright, so here we have the actual tier list itself in a visual format. Thank you, Tier Maker. Great website. As we can see, in the bottom we have Tashigi, Nami and Chopper, all terrible. They all group down there together at the bottom. Then we have Kinemon, Bege, Jinbei and Smoker in E tier. Smoker would be F tier if not for his invincibility. I was tempted to put Bege down in F tier as well, but he just barely makes it up with his infinite counter. Jimbei as well, feel like he could be lower, but his Vagabond Drill does a lot of damage. Brook is also not great, but his heals and utility bring him up a bit higher. Shanks, Kid and Fujitora have like good specials, but like Fujitora's damage isn't great, and then Shanks and Kid both have something that holds them back from being great. Zoro is like Fujitora, but like his attacks are a bit better. And then Hancock and Ivankov, you know, both decent. And you got Sanji, Marco, pre-time skip Luffy, Killer, and B. A, we have pre-time skip Sanji, because he's better than post. Franky, Lucci, post-time skip Luffy, Mihawk, Judge, Barto, Croc. Croc's damage is good, but he can't use his Croc's special damage is good, but he can't use his good specials in full force burst, so he stays in A, and Barto has instant guard break, but not anything crazy afterwards to take advantage of it, other than just specials, which are kind of good. S tier has a lot of characters in it, because there's a lot of good characters. A lot of them are like only there because they can become invincible, otherwise they'd be lower. Carrot just barely makes it into S, because, well, if her attacks were good without her shock, then she would be higher, but if her shock fails, then she's screwed. Robin is also a bit of a weird case, so as I made clear. Reiju has good damage, but she's very vulnerable while she's standing still doing her combo 3, so she's not as high as she could be. The Vinsmoke brothers are good. Kiku's great, but she only has her instant guard break during her full force burst. Buggy, Hawkins, both great. The Usopp's fantastic, but you know, all of their damage relies on their specials, and the best one is Atlas Comet, which can completely miss and you don't get any of your damage, and you can try again quickly, but it's not consistent. Cavendish is great. Rouge could be better, but Rouge's form change is great, but his normal self could be better. Law is fantastic, and his invincibility is great, but his normal attacks are a bit lacking, and his room setup is annoying. Blackbeard barely stays in S+, he could have been lower, thanks to his normal sucking, but his special attacks are really good for most content, and if he gets more stats in future from the DLC, then he won't have to worry as much about not killing in one shot. And then yeah, Katakuri is great for both his stun lock and still being good without it. Ace is invincible and still has great attacks. Drake and Smoothie are both fantastic characters and can form change into even better characters because they can form change into giants. And then all the rest of the giants are also here because giants are just amazing. Doffy has his amazing parasite move that completely shreds entire rooms of enemies to death. And then you have your top three, which it's kind of hard to order them in which order is like the best because they're almost like different specs of like Oden is full offense with not great defense. Cracker is great defense with not the best offense. Like it's still good, but not as good as like the other two there. And then Akainu is kind of a mix at the middle where he has great offense, but not quite as good as Oden. And then great defense, but not quite as good as Cracker. So it's kind of a spectrum there, but they're all three of those are probably the best three in the game. And there you have it. All the One Piece Pirate Warriors 4 characters from the base game and the first DLC pass, ranked from best to worst. Hopefully this has been informative and helped you learn about all the existing characters, and maybe you were surprised by someone being better than you thought, or the opposite. Like I said, be sure to leave a comment if you disagree with me and think I was too harsh on anyone, or maybe even too nice. I love this game, and I cannot wait for the new DLC to come out. I'll be sure to release videos of me playing that DLC for the first time, with my initial impressions of each character, and an eventual tier list update with the new characters' rankings and where they go compared to these characters. I'll have to test the new characters as much as I've tested these ones, which is a lot. It'll also be interesting to see how the new soul maps change the game and potentially make me change the rest of this list as well, depending on how every other character gets updated, because who knows, maybe all the trash characters will suddenly end up being amazing and all the good characters will continue to be good. There will also be other Pirate Warriors videos I want to make too, like theorizing potential future DLC characters after this pass, since we already know everyone that's coming in this one, it got leaked before it was even announced. As well as maybe moveset theories for both returning characters and some new ones. Different ideas I have. We'll have to see. Just gotta ride this motivation wave while I've still got it. I've also got other game playthroughs planned, and some even recorded already as well. Although, there's definitely going to be a lot of a focus on Pirate Warriors at the moment, because that's where a lot of my motivation is right now. It's where I'm hyper fixated on at the moment. Either way, I hope to see you soon with more videos. See you then.